Business, while criticized often, maybe rightfully in many cases, can be a large force for structural change and structural good. So with that in mind, as you talk to thousands of companies, what are some of the largest structural issues that corporate America is facing right now?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I think it's really important that we talk about businesses' role in addressing what's happening in the world right now, not just the response to COVID-19, but the response to the death of the murder of George Floyd and, really what's happening across the country in terms of the inequalities, the inequities that we're seeing. COVID-19 and the recession that we're headed into was just exposed a lot of these issues, as you say. So we talk about inequality. We see wealth inequality throughout the country. We certainly see inequality in terms of job type. Black and brown communities are the hardest hit by coronavirus. Those jobs were the first to go. Jobs disproportionately held by Black and brown people. We've seen companies, in different sectors hit very differently. Frontline workers really bearing the brunt of the coronavirus, but also the economic impact. So there's a lot of issues that are sort of now been exposed by COVID-19. We think what's happening is, when you think of only of business as a machine for generating short-term profits, that's fine. And Jim Cramer may be right. Maybe the market doesn't care about social justice, but individual businesses do, and they must. We know a couple of things. Over the last 6 years, we've polled over 100,000 Americans, and they want businesses to do more. We've seen companies that really across every industry beginning to lead on addressing the needs of all of their stakeholders, meaning their workers, their customers, the communities where they operate, the planet, of course, with climate change, and of course, making money and looking after their shareholders. What we found is that companies that balance that well, do all of those things, are actually better businesses over the long term. So we're shifting from a market, from where people didn't really matter.
Martin, let me jump in for a second. Because we got a chart up here that's showing our audience the top priorities for American business. Paying a fair wage was listed at the very top. We know that extended unemployment benefits are coming off in more than 2 months, unless they are, or just about 2 months, unless they are extended. There's going to be a lot of people who see a continued reduction in at least what they can live on right now. These frontline workers, these women and men that kept our stores stocked, the ones that we never talked about before 3 months ago, they're getting these hero bonuses. Those are also coming off. What are some of the real world, not pie in the sky theories, real world actionable ideas that companies can and should implement right now?
Extend paid sick leave for, way beyond the initial period. We see Verizon doing that. We've seen Darden restaurants do that. They own an Olive Garden. We've seen companies extend hazard pay. We know the end of May, a bunch of companies hazard pay, which were additional $2 or $3 an hour, dropped away. We've seen companies extend that, like Amazon, into June. We've seen companies provide employees with backup dependent care. Verizon provides $100 a day to employees who need that money for backup dependent care, not just for children, but for elderly parents. So there's a whole bunch of issues related to how companies meet the needs of their workers without necessarily having to layoffs. We've seen companies provide hazard pay, to your point, Brian. 20-30% of companies in the largest corporations in America provided hazard pay. So, the question now is how much of that will stick around? Will others follow the examples set by Darden, for example, of making paid sick leave now permanent? It doesn't feel like the coronavirus is over. And so therefore, if employees need that, if they need to take a little extra time off, then employers providing that, is going to just help them out, help provide a better work environment for those folks, providing personal protective equipment. We know from our polling, 80% of Americans want companies to provide PPE and provide a safe workplace. That makes sense. I'm sure you want a safe workplace. I certainly do. So things like that are real world examples of companies taking steps that are totally appropriate right now and are also good for business.